This is Mike Benoit of Tyranny Busters. Today I'm interviewing Charles Novitski, and we're going to be discussing welfarism. And the main point of the Google Hangout is that my position is that we shouldn't be arguing utilitarianism, and Charles is going to be arguing in favor of utilitarianism as a measure or as a means of debating with people the fallacies of welfare. Is that pretty close, Charles?
For the sake of this debate, I'll agree with that.
Okay, so we got agreement on that. Now, first off, my considerations on welfare is that it's wrong to take Charles's money and to give it to me. That's something that we actually hire government to deal with when someone steals from somebody. So Charles and I both agree that that's not okay to do. So I like to keep my argument to that. But Charles has got sort of 5 reasons, I think it is, Charles,
Yeah.
why it doesn't work. And so that's what we're going to go into now. And you did send that to me, so I don't know if I still have it. I might have to look for it here. There it is.
Actually, it's 6 reasons.
6 reasons?
Mhm.
Okay. So we could start off with, you could discuss your reason 1, why it doesn't work.
So I just want to back up half a step and say, yes, you highlighted that that I'm making a utilitarian reason. So let's call it 6 utilitarian reasons, A through E. But I'm not negating that there's not an even deeper, more important reason, which is the morality for it. So I'm not saying take one without the other, but I'm sorry, you wanted the first one, here it is. So why welfarism will eventually prove itself to be unsustainable. My first one is welfarism systematically rewards unproductivity, and usually laziness, which sometimes is or sometimes financial irresponsibility or stupidity, till eventually there are more takers for this welfare than there are givers in this tax society.
Okay. Now, actually, my point is to dispute the idea that a utilitarian argument against something like this it's not workable. So we're on the same page with the morality, and my point is to discuss why the utilitarian argument isn't workable, and your point would be to discuss why it is a workable argument.
Okay.
Okay. So here you say welfarism systematically rewards for unproductivity and or laziness and or financial irresponsibility. And I don't know if you mean by that the person that gets the money is not responsible in how they spend it, because I think they have a fixed amount and they have to pay maybe their rent and buy groceries and whatnot. And so, they're going to be responsible within the confines of that check. To say that it rewards people being lazy, there are women who are not lazy, who are just in a condition where the husband ran out and they're with 2 or 3 kids. And so, and they're busy keeping a nice clean house and taking care of the kids and everything else, and doing the role of a mother and to the children. So I dispute that point on that basis.
Well, your point is good. What I meant by rewards financial irresponsibility is not what they do with the welfare check that makes them irresponsible, but I would argue that what has led them to this sad situation was not being able to handle the money that they made in the past. And so that past financial irresponsibility is what led them to need to go into welfare. But also back to what you said, laziness. Yeah, you know what? It's a good point. They are cleaning the house, they are working hard. But remember, capitalism doesn't reward those who work hard. Capitalism rewards those who create wealth and work creatively. So I'm not saying they're sleeping in bed, but at the same time, working 2 jobs or 3 jobs if required might be the antidote to their problem. And therefore, I say it's laziness.
Okay, then my rebuttal is this is not an argument about capitalism. And you made a point that probably they weren't being responsible with their money before, so that's why they end up on welfare. And I said that in this scenario where the old man takes off and the woman was responsible the whole period of time, so that disputes that notion. We each had a counterpoint on that one. So you want to go on to B?
No, I just want to make my counterpoint. I don't think I made one, and that is this. The point is that, okay, I forgot my counterpoint to your point, so we'll just go to B. You want me to read it?
Yeah, go to B.
The process that creates wealth is a self-directed market. It's not directed by any central state. And welfarism, sadly, by having politicians or government bodies hijack that autonomy of the free market to what it thinks is right or wrong, is burdens the entrepreneurial reward system that actually causes all the good things that you and I appreciate. So just the definition of welfarism is counters the free market. Welfarism is a form of central planning. The free market is the opposite of central planning. It's autonomous planning.
Okay, well, and this wasn't a discussion about welfarism, versus free marketism, but you were arguing why welfarism doesn't work, and you didn't read B, so I'll read B. It says welfarism destroys the autonomous market capitalistic process and hinders the entrepreneurial reward system that is the engine of future investment. Now, because this is a long one, I'm not going to go into the second part. I'll just address that. I don't see welfarism doesn't destroy the autonomous market. Capitalist process is continuing on. In fact, welfarism could even be a spurt to that, because when people feel like they have now they got a little extra burden on them, so their necessity level to produce even more than they had before because of this extra burden drives them, like the mother of invention is necessity, drives them to go out and achieve and produce more, and actually is a boon to the intrapreneur reward system.
Well, any amount of interference with the free market, whether it's 1% or 90%, has an impact on prosperity and jobs. But essentially what you're saying, if I got you correct here, Mike, is if we have the government destroy 50% of our wealth, now we have to work that much harder, so it's better for the system. It sounds like that. But even if you did not say that, I'd say any drag on the market is hurts one or more jobs. In other words, there's no such thing as 1% welfarism, socialism, that does not have an impact.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't have an impact, but you're saying it has this negative impact. And I'm saying a 1% drag can actually have a positive impact. It can spur the persons that are in the economic engine to produce more because of the necessity to have to produce more to cover this other expense. So that's my counterpoint to your point that it's going to be hindering the entrepreneur reward system. That can actually spur it on.
I agree. It's a good point. The only question is, can we constrain these tyrants, just to the 1%? We see that they usually want 2% and then 5% and then 10%. Now I'd say they have about 75% of our autonomous market.
Okay. So maybe we should still cover the part on this that says a sort of evolution. You want to read that? A sort
Okay,
of.
I'll read it. A sort of evolution of better products is taking place in the market through competition, I should say. Without this autonomous entrepreneurial market, people eventually will not be able to find jobs. And eventually, just like Venezuela, Brazil, everyone becomes jobless, poor, hungry, and desperate, which is what we could see on YouTube now in Venezuela. So once we kill the golden goose, we all starve.
Okay, well, you use an example of the worst example of welfarism if you want to, but no one's condemning the entrepreneurial process by having some welfarism. And to say that people can't find abundant jobs, really, it's actually not so, because you could say that people on welfare are not taking a job, so that leaves other jobs available for the people that are producing. And, as long as you can keep the production up to cover those people that need the welfarism, then everybody's happy.
That's a good point about them being out of the labor market, because now they're on the public dole. But at the same time, when Starbucks has to give up 35% of their profit, which is actually the icing on the cake, you might imagine, the cream of the butter, they have less money left over to invest, to expand, and certainly to hire new people. So I would assert that for every dollar the government takes away from businesses to give to poor people, we're probably losing threefold or fourfold or fivefold of jobs.
Well, that's a speculation, because that dollar given to the poor person, they actually go out and spend it into the economy too. So, what the heck is that noise?
Let me see if I could put this on mute.
I hope so.
Somebody's expecting a call here, and I will. Okay, good. I'm sorry for that.
All right. Now, I think we both, because you start these and I finish. Do you need to rebut that again?
No, I will only say that, well, I'm not sure what your point is. Maybe you. No, I'm not going to rebut it. I'll leave it at that.
All right. Now you want to read C?
C. As a consequence of B above, this lack of jobs, which in turn causes hunger and maybe some fear about the economy, can lead to a kind of disheveled society where crime becomes manifest. And guess what? Venezuela is arguably, if not the murder capital of the world, certainly the top, one of the top two. So once we lose jobs, as Hitler showed the world, we start to become desperate, hungry, and irrational, and that destroys the very civil fabric of that society.
Yeah, well, I don't know. See, you didn't make a causal connection from losing jobs and Hitler showing the world on that, whatever. Because they had a depressed economy there, so Hitler comes to power and does dastardly things. But, maybe if those people were actually getting assistance and benefit, instead of having the German war reparations were so deep and so heavy, that there wasn't any left over for the German people, so they couldn't have a welfare system for those that were desperate, thus leading to desperate means of terrible, evil choices as far as a leader of the country.
Good point. You certainly might agree with me that joblessness leading to hunger causes some problem within this society. That you might agree with. I do like your clever point about had Hitler had some sort of a welfarism, then maybe the people might not have been panicky. But I believe welfare is like cocaine. It's a short-term solution, and after 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, eventually it's going to collapse. So even in the scenario that you mentioned with Hitler having given welfare to the people, or let's say Hitler's twin brother, it would eventually lead to something unsustainable after the government ran out of money, just like Greece is running out of money now.
Yeah, well, you're just talking about mismanagement, and that doesn't lead to necessarily that the welfare in itself is unsustainable. So those are, each of us got a point, counterpoint in that. You want to go on to D?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll read it exactly this time. Welfarism, in other words, causes financial burden and depletion of local resources, in other words, jobs and housing, but causes an even larger influx of poor, foreign poor or national poor, that will come to your state or country to seek those rewards and move there.
Okay.
The problem is this burden eventually causes disturbances with the people that live there. There'll be more competition for housing, rents might go up, and jobs, especially some unskilled labor jobs, which is what a lot of foreigners seem to be doomed with, but not all. I don't want to make too much of a blanket statement. Who is that going to hurt when they come for those unskilled jobs, let's say painters, sharecroppers, or whatever it is? It's your own minority, your own poor is going to be hurt the most. It's kind of stupid.
Okay, so welfarism causes financial burden, you say, and of course, I guess any cost causes a somewhat of a financial burden on people. If their car breaks down, that causes a financial burden, or if they have to go get their suit cleaned because they spilled something on it, causes a financial burden. But the idea that it's depleting of local resources, jobs and houses in itself doesn't hold water. And this other idea that it causes an influx of foreign people to come in and get the rewards. How would that be if they just weren't allowed to come in? That it says, you say they're going to come in, causes an influx of that. Or if the whole world was practicing welfarism, then why would they come? Because they already have it where they're at. So that's my rebuttal.
Well, even if they had it where they're at, if it's not equivalent to the country that's offering them the most rewards to move and get on the ship, I would say that's still an incentive to move from a low welfare vicinity to a high welfare vicinity. But the point is, it's still dangling money or some reward system to move to your country. It's almost like the equivalent of a girl dating you for your money rather than her love for you. You'll always have a doubt. Does she love me for my money, or does she love me for me? My ancestors that came to America where there was no welfare system. So that kind of suggests that they came for love of this country and what America had to offer. But had America waved money to them, it would be the same thing like Charles or Mike waving our wallets to a girl, I'm rich, will you date me? If we got married, I'd always be in doubt.
Well, came for what they can get from the country and for love of the country would apply to whether or not there was welfarism or no welfarism. So, and the idea that they're going to move across the oceans because there's a better handout, just doesn't strike me, especially as if the government says no, you can't come here for these handouts. So that's a counterpoint.
So what are you saying, Mike? Are you saying if there was no welfare system, that we couldn't be suspicious of or doubtful of their motivation, that would correct it when they move here? We would then be a higher probability that they're coming for what America stands for?
No, either way, if they're coming and there is no welfare system, they're coming for what America stands for. And if they're coming and because there is a welfare system and that's the way it works, then you can assume they're coming for that as part and parcel of what America stands for. So the point is that you try to compare whether or not they love you or you love your money, but they love the American system. And so that's where they're coming from. But I'm also saying that if the government doesn't want them here, then they don't allow them.
I think that, I'd need to show you evidence, but right now we do have a lot of people coming to this country and getting welfare. I think studies show that about 74% of most immigrants from all countries, Mexico, Middle East, you name it, are getting welfare, a higher percentage than natively born Americans. To me, empirically, the evidence seems to be that they're coming here for those rewards.
Well, I'm not arguing that point. So I'm arguing if they don't want them to come here, then the government and people can stop them from coming here. So we've kind of beat this dead horse. Want to go on to the next one?
Okay.
E.
Okay. Yes, sir. The problem with welfare is it slowly attracts those who sadly, because they are in poverty, they typically have low working skills in terms of their skill set. Typically also a low education. Many of them have not graduated high school. A lot of them, higher percentage than normal Americans, can't even read sometimes their own language. And because they have no skills, most likely they will require this permanent assistance. It's not going to be temporary. It's going to be their whole life, because unless they increase the education or skills, they've added nothing to their tool set. But when these people accumulate low-wage people, low-skilled people, eventually your country is burdened till, once again, it still cannot afford the extra expenses upon society, whether it be money or housing or health care. The camel's back eventually breaks.
So you're basically talking about a welfare program that isn't managed properly. So if the program was managed properly and didn't allow these low-skilled immigrants that you're talking about, and it was to help out the people that found themselves into the, in an unfortunate situation, then it wouldn't do all of these things, unsustainability you're talking about. It would be controllable. And so, and therefore, not in the category that you're assigning it.
So perhaps you're agreeing with my modus operandi, which I want to cross out the Statue of Liberty where it says, by M.L. Lazarus, the socialist poet, give us your tired and your poor. I want to change that to give us your untired, you're energetic, and instead of your poor, you're those that are wealthy with talent, not wealthy with money. If that's what you're saying, then we're on the same page. But the problem is that these people, if Mike owned a condo unit with a couple of extra units, you for sure would make sure the people that moved in are responsible, hardworking, upstanding people with jobs. We need to have the same approach in our country. So if we had no welfare, or even if we did have welfare, I think a little welfare would be able to be tolerated provided we were scrupulous on who we let into our condos or likewise our country.
All right, so you're arguing it'd be okay to have a little welfare there, but my grandparents on my mother's side were tired and poor. I'm sure my grandmother was very tired from being a nurse during World War I and working double shifts and supporting her 11 siblings. And so was my grandfather, who had fought in World War I and didn't have much of anything to speak of. He was tired and poor. And they came here and made life for themselves, worked hard, and paid their way. So I'm still okay with that being on the Statue of Liberty. But again, you made reference that some welfareism would be okay.
I beg to differ. The way you described your grandparents, they don't sound tired and poor in my sense. They sound, first of all, your grandmother, by virtue of her being a nurse, had a skill set. I call that a form of talent, of wealth, the opposite of poor. So when I say poor, I don't necessarily mean economically poor. I do mean maybe poor, poor in terms of her knowledge. And as a nurse, she couldn't have been depleted of resources. She may not have had no money in a bank, but knowledge is possibly a form of wealth.
Okay, well, my rebuttal to that is she never used her nursing skills in America. So, you want to go on to F?
I'm sorry, say that again, Mike.
She never used her nursing skills in America.
So what, she became a family mother, just, taking care of her kids?
Right.
Still, not everyone that comes in as a doctor or a PhD or a plumber needs to take that occupation. It's still valuable to raise up your children. So I have no qualm against that as a choice. But if you come to this country with no skill, which once again I call that a form of the opposite of poor, then we'll be doomed, no matter what choice this person makes, to have to cough up money for you. I admire your grandmother for saying, raising my family is also an important responsibility.
Okay, so you want to go on to F?
Yes, sir. And this is the final foot in my mouth comment that you are challenging. And so socialism, interestingly, does not remain static. It tends to grow and grow, just like a cancer does, just like a snowball does, slowly giving more and more power to the state and the politicians every day. And it accumulates in size so much till this greedy government process, like a parasite, consumes and controls the entire body, which in this case is the majority of the country's gross domestic product, in other words, annual wealth. Basically, in this scenario, once the vampire government, for its excuse of having socialism, collapses, just like Russia did.
Okay, so if the government just took all of its, took half of your production for the purpose of being an imperialistic country, and in fact, going around the world and making the world do what they want them to do, would that not cause the same kind of drain on people?
So you're talking about imperialism?
Yeah, would that not give the government the same kind of power, the politicians?
Well, right, so we can say welfarism grows the government through an inner process. Imperialism grows the government through an external process, but they all eventually feed the government and the state, making them so powerful till, like a 200-ton elephant, they squash their own babies.
All right.
Society.
Yeah, basically I'm talking about power to the politicians. Now, so what if you had socialism, and people living under socialism, and everybody contributing and everybody taking out according to their needs and putting in according to their abilities? And this was managed properly, and people worked hard, put everything in, and only took out what they needed. Would that not work good too?
I think the problem is that when we define according to their needs and according to their abilities, the idiots in socialism have misdefined it, because I could probably come up with a similar thing and say like this: on an island where there were 100 people, not everyone could lift the heavy logs. So the older frail people, according to their ability, will still work 20 hours a week, maybe sweeping the huts or the village, or maybe making soup or making, peeling potatoes. Whereas the young, healthy people, according to their needs, lift the boulders, lift the rocks, carry the heavy water. But now we have a system where those that can't do are given a ticket to say, look, you're too weak. You don't even have to make soup for the village. Just stay home and watch Oprah all day long. And that's the difference between a good definition of according to their needs and abilities and the moronic version that we have now.
All right. So your point is that it's just not being run properly.
Well, I am not in favor of any amount of socialism, because it's just somebody with a gun forcing me to be charitable at their expense. But I would be willing to be open-minded and say, maybe, according to your needs, has some sort of a value. I prefer you and I decide who that is. So this way, if we do something good, we get that reward that humans get when we help out somebody we know that deserves help. When the government does it behind our back, they're basically stealing the birthday present we want to give to Jane Doe, giving to them. We're not part of the equation. We don't get that good feeling in our heart. So theft of our compassion is also evil. And that's how I believe it's done.
All right. So my whole point in wanting to have this interview, discussion, debate with you was to demonstrate that when you argue the utilitarian approach, you can win some of the points, you can lose some of the points, but you're left with, you still got the issue still there and it still exists, versus arguing the morality and just sticking with the morality of things. Charles, is it okay for you to use the government gun to take money out of my pocket to give to somebody else?
Well, you're not going to get an argument out of me there. I believe theft for a good reason or theft for an evil, greedy reason is still theft. It's a coercive force. So I see what you're talking about here. It's probably more important than any of the sub-excuses I gave as flaws, because those just argue pro or con the usefulness of the process. But we have to talk about, is it evil for me to steal Mike's money and give it away to either a millionaire or a poor person? It's still evil theft.
Okay, and I think we covered it. I just had some guests show up here, so I think we did a good job here, and let's post it on YouTube and spread it.
Let's spread the message.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.